Do you want to know why Trump's approval ratings are through the roof during all this? I'll tell you why in a second. We have a strike coming. There's going to be more of that. And finally, the American economic machine doing what it does best. All that is coming up right now on I'm Right. Do you know why Donald Trump's approval ratings for how he's handling this whole thing are through the roof? And I mean through the roof. Highest of his presidency. We're talking 60% plus approval ratings. That doesn't make any sense, right? It's all that everyone's scared, everybody's desperate, the economy's going down the toilet, people are dying. How could people be happy? Well, for one, look, he's done a pretty good job. Cutting red tape. He's got smart people around him. You all know my disagreements with it. I don't need to belabor that point all day long. But overall, I mean, that's a tough decision to have to make. Imagine somebody came and handed you a piece of paper and said, well, you can choose A or you can choose B. You can choose 2 million dead Americans or you can crush your economy. That's not a decision any president ever wants to have to make. That's part of it. But, you know, in life, so much of life is relative. Everything is relative. If I told you that tonight you were going to have to go home and for dinner I was going to give you a piece of moldy bread, you would be disgusted, right? Oh, what? That's gross. What are you talking about? However, if I just pulled you out of a hellish prison somewhere where they've been starving you for 4 days and I offered you a piece of moldy bread, you would inhale it. You want to know what that moldy bread represents? Well, let's just be honest. That's too nice of a word to describe the United States media. We have a crisis on our hands. We have an economic crisis. We have a global pandemic. We have all these things going on. And instead of being able to sit down in front of the TV and get real-time information, unbiased, real-time, what's going on here, what's going on there, tell me what has to be done. Instead, we have some of the grossest people in the country with major national platforms either asking gotcha questions of the president, which we'll get together and which we'll get to in a second, or openly mocking the people who are helping. You see, MyPillow, by the way, I own a MyPillow. They're not a sponsor or anything. I'm just telling you I own one and they're fantastic. Mike Lindell, he is the owner of MyPillow. He has had a rough life. Former hardcore drug addict, gave his life to Jesus. He talks about that all the time. He is constantly treating his employees well. He's constantly giving back. He's constantly talking about Jesus everywhere he goes. He's basically a saint. He is partnering with the president along with other corporations to do what he can do to help out Americans and save lives because we don't have enough masks. There aren't enough masks out there for our healthcare workers, let alone to spread around the country. So what's Mike Lindell do? He shifts a major part of his production line from making pillows to making masks. 50,000 a day. He gets up at the podium during Trump's press conference and talks about that. Talks about the Bible. We need to talk about Jesus more. And oh, by the way, this is what I'm doing. I'm making masks. The man got up there, gave his testimony, and announced that he is going to actively save lives. And do you want to know what the response was from the American media? Allow me to give you an example or two. This is from Julie Brown of the Miami Herald. The MyPillow guy was at the coronavirus briefing today. Boy, oh boy, do we need SNL this Saturday. If this had been an SNL skit, we would have thought it was fake, right? You can't make this blank up. It was the bad word for poop. Who is going to play the MyPillow guy? Ha ha ha. This is from Jonathan Chait of New York Magazine. Look, it's hard to fill up 90 minutes worth of material every day, so you need to get some sponsored material / infomercials. People, I picked 2. There were 102 yesterday of major media figures, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, openly mocking the guy who stood up at the podium and announced that he's going to cost himself profits to save lives. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why Donald Trump's approval ratings are way up here. Because everything is relative and they're comparing him with these disgusting people. Here's Jim Acosta.
What do you say to Americans who are upset with you over the way you downplayed this crisis over the last couple of months? We have it very much under control in this country. The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. It's going to disappear. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. March 4th, we have a very small number of people in this country infected. March 10th, we're prepared. We're doing a great job with it. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. What do you say to Americans who believe that you got this wrong?
And I do want them to stay calm. And we are doing a great job. If you look at those individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away. You know it is going away, and it will go away. And we're going to have a great victory. And it's people like you and CNN that say things like that. It's why people just don't want to listen to CNN anymore. You could ask a normal question. The statements I made are: I want to keep the country calm. I don't want panic in the country. I could cause panic much better than even you. I could do much. I would make you look like a minor league player. But you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to have our country be calm and strong and fight and win. And it will go away.
Good for Trump. And you know what? How embarrassing was that from Jim Acosta? I mean, let's be honest. This is not some blogger in his basement in his underwear somewhere. That is the White House correspondent for CNN, one of the biggest news organizations in the United States of America, sitting there in a chair, speaking with the President of the United States of America. And that's what you ask? The country's watching. The country wants information. Even if you hate him. Yes, it's obvious you hate him. Is this the time? People are losing their livelihoods. People are losing their lives. And you prepared quite well. It says right here on March 4th and then on March 15th. When you compare anybody to that leech of a human being, that's why you're hated. That's why you're hated. Here's Chuck Todd.
Do you think there is blood on the president's hands, considering the slow response? Or is that too harsh of a criticism?
I think that's a little too harsh. I think what's happening...
Yeah, a little too harsh. Do you think that's a little too harsh? Blood on the president's hands? That's an honest question we're going to ask right now? Come on. Just be a decent human being for a few weeks until we can get past this thing. I don't even expect the American media to reform itself. Look, only God himself is capable of that kind of a miracle. I don't expect that at all. But you can't hold back on your most disgusting wants for a few weeks? Ask real questions? Get the American people real information? Things that may help them? Does the president have blood on his hands? Listen to Rachel Maddow.
The president said when he announced that those ships would be put into action against the COVID-19 epidemic, he said one of those ships would be operational in New York Harbor by next week. That's nonsense. It will not be there next week.
And the naval hospital ship, the USNS Comfort, you see it right there on your screen, has just docked in New York City. The ship will be used to house non-coronavirus patients, and that in itself will free up the city's hospital care to focus primarily on those with the virus. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo will brief media there at the top of the hour. We're going to bring that to you live as soon as that gets underway. NBC's Rahima.
Amazing how dumb you can consistently make yourself look when you show up at work every single day and you decide your mission statement is to get Trump. People, you know I love Donald Trump. You know I want the man reelected. How many times have you heard me at this desk sit down and be critical of him? Several times, right? Been critical throughout this process of several different things. Because I don't wake up every day and put on the pro-Trump pajamas or the anti-Trump pajamas, because then you look like a buffoon. Analyze each and every situation yourself, you know, like an adult. Like an adult. But I guess that's probably too much to ask. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. You know what doesn't make me uncomfortable? Spending some time on mybookie.ag. You know I love politics. You love politics. That's why you love the show. Well, and me. Well, MyBookie.ag allows you to bet on politics right now because we don't have any sports. We're drowning here without sports. MyBookie.ag knows this. You can bet on the next terrorist who's going to be captured. You can bet on the electoral college results. You can bet on whether or not Donald Trump's Twitter account is going to be suspended. You can make just an easy one who's going to be the next president of the United States of America. MyBookie.ag is here to help you break up the monotony of this quarantine. And look, we all could use a little free money right now. If you go to MyBookie.ag and use the promo code Jesse, again, that's MyBookie.ag, promo code Jesse, they will match you. You put in $250, they match your $250. You put in $1,000, they match $1,000. People, let's take advantage of a little free money right now. MyBookie.ag, promo code Jesse. Remember, let's go start playing together. I'm about to tell you something that you're going to be shocked by. So you ready for this? I don't know everything that's coming. I know. I know. You're like, what? That can't be, Jesse. You're like a prophet. I know it seems that way sometimes. And yes, I know I've called exactly what's going to happen throughout this process with the economy. Yes, I've been right about everything, and that's a burden. But I don't know what's going to happen. Why? Well, let's just look at the numbers. We have, and this is according to the government, potentially 47 to 50 million unemployed people, over 30% unemployment if this shutdown does remain till the end of April, which is what they're talking about. And keep in mind, that's just on the federal level. We have idiots like that Northam in Virginia closing down his state till June 10th. Insane, right? Let's assume, and this is a very big assumption, let's assume the government's correct about 47 to 50 million. I actually think that number could be a little short, but, well, allow me to explain that really quickly. The reason I say that number could even be short, but it's going to be that number is this. You remember the last jobs report? Remember? Last unemployment numbers? What were they? 3.2 million. 3.2 million. Now, factor in this. 3.2 million unemployment. That's with people who qualify, only about a third to a fourth of them had even called in and declared that they were unemployed. That is people who were self-employed, 1099s, they didn't qualify for it. That is people who were just about to get laid off. That is the week before. So let's assume, just for the sake of argument, let's assume 3.2 million is a third of what it actually was. That's probably light, but I don't want to overblow things. Let's just call it 10. Let's call it 10 million. 10 million. That's about 2 weeks ago now. Now, understand that that number grows, what's the word all the doomsday prophets tell me? Exponentially over the next month. Because businesses, as we go along, the closures will ramp up, not down, as businesses run out of capital. You see businesses are hanging on by a thread right now. Okay, well, I can lay this person off, and maybe we can cut costs here. And if we do, we've got so much money here, I can probably stretch that out. That's what businesses are doing. Business owners are sitting down right now. They're crunching the numbers. That number grows rapidly because the capital just simply cannot last forever. Now, let's assume we do have 40 to 50 million people, which you can see, I just told you we're at 10. 40 to 50 million might be light by the end of April. Nobody on earth knows what comes with that. That's the point I was trying to make when I said you don't understand everything that's coming. And what I mean by nobody on earth knowing what's coming is this. How many suicides? We already have them ramping up all over the country. The Knoxville mayor had to put out a PSA because so many people were killing themselves in Knoxville County. That's real. That's happening right now in the United States of America. So we have suicides, depressions. Obviously, those two often go hand in hand. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, spousal abuse, child abuse, malnutrition. We had lines stretched up the highway for emergency food supplies, not in Zimbabwe yesterday, in Pennsylvania. That's April 30th. Or that was March 30th. Yeah, that was March 30th. What does that look like April 30th? How long is that line? I am not trying to scare you. What I'm trying to tell you is we cannot possibly wrap our minds around all the bad things that come with that number. If we really get to the point where 50 million Americans are out of work. Rent's due. Kids got to eat. Don't know where to go. People, hard times are coming. Scary times are coming. And uncertain times are coming. You want just a little preview of things that you're going to start seeing that you didn't see coming? How about Whole Foods? Guess what we got coming there? A strike. You know, all those grocery stores you've been flooding to make sure that, well, I just want to make sure I'm stocked up on food, right? We just got to have food. The grocery store workers are starting to look around and they're going to think, I'm the only one taking any chances here. So everyone else gets to hide in the house and I have to go out and work every day? Well, that doesn't seem right. I need more pay. I need this. I need that. I need sick leave. On top of the people with legitimate concerns, you're going to have a bunch of people who just milk this thing. We know that. That's human nature. I'm not throwing accusations at anybody. You can have a bunch of Whole Foods people out there, and they're one of, several as this thing snowballs that are going to say, I bet you I can get a little bit more for me. And that's human nature. People are going to get more and more and more selfish as times get desperate, as times get tough. People do scary things. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to wake you up. And I'm trying to tell you this. Mayors need to hear from you about opening your city back up. Governors, your congressman, your president, at the guy on Twitter, he's on there all the time. They need to hear how desperate you are to open your city back up. If you do not, and if they do not, we are going to be sitting here at the end of April, and we are going to be looking at things that we never, ever, ever thought possible. Nobody can imagine what's coming. People do scary, desperate things during those times. Time to wake up. Let your voice be heard. All right, we're not done. Hang on. Joining me now from the belly of the beast is the first contributor and writer for Washington Examiner, TIANA Lowe. TIANA, before we get to Jim Acosta and Chuck Todd and all these idiots and strikes and coronavirus, how is quarantine going? They have you guys pretty much welded in your apartments back there, don't they?
Absolutely. In the People's Republic of the District of Columbia, all the parks are being shut down slowly but surely. Anywhere where you're going to get fresh air without a homeless person screaming in your face, it's all gone. So, very exciting things to look forward to, like walking to your CVS and hoping that you don't get the Rona. So that's how it's going.
I have a question about that specifically, about going out, about them closing everything, because here's where I'm at on it. Yes, I think people should be staying home as much as humanly possible, taking precautions. We don't want to spread this. It's not as if it's nothing. It's a global pandemic. I have a major issue with what I am seeing everywhere, and I'm seeing this from major media figures of this narc society we've become, snapping people's pictures if they're standing too close together. We have every bored suburban housewife reporting teenage kids for playing basketball. We have elected officials actively telling their citizens to report on other citizens. That is some Stasi crap to me, and I think this is way out of bounds.
So we know that this differs from the flu more than its fatality rate by its transmission rate. We know that for every one carrier of the flu, there may be another one person who acquires it. This is more like another 2 or 3 people who acquire it. And what really helps mitigate that transmission rate? Masks, even non-surgical masks, even just simple homemade cotton masks. And what did the World Health Organization, those bootlicking Chinese propagandists, tell us? That we didn't need masks. I mean, even the Surgeon General of the United States told us that we didn't need masks. And now we know that an N95 mask is named that because it essentially protects about 95% of particulate matter. But we also know that surgical masks still do the majority. Cotton t-shirt masks still filter out half. So we see South Korea and we see Japan sort of returning to normal simply because they're willing to accept that you do not shut down the entire economy without thinking about how will testing, treatment, and mask proliferation affect the next few weeks. And we already know we'll benefit.
Now, Donald Trump, his approval ratings are through the roof for this thing. People love, I mean, even some Democrats, independents, Republicans, they love how he's handled this, which is actually funny because I have some major disagreements with it, but be that as it may, I have argued that part of the reason his approval ratings for this are through the roof is because of the disgusting questions we're getting at these press conferences from the media. How can they not see how terrible they look? When you're sitting down and you're Jim Acosta or you're MSNBC or you're Chuck Todd and you're asking Joe Biden if Trump has blood on his hands, are they that deep in their own bubbles that they can't see how terrible that makes them look? And in relation, it makes them look even better?
So Gallup found that Trump is right now at his record high approval rating, which follows close to his polling average. So a part of that is just Democrats who will never vote for him, but do appreciate that he is acting like a leader right now. But another part of it are independents. So Republican approval rating has not changed. It's improved by about a point in the past month, but otherwise it's just been independents and Democrats. The independents, it's pretty clear where it's coming from. It is largely coming from the fact that Congress usually has underwater approval ratings. Trump usually has underwater approval ratings. Most governors even often have underwater approval ratings. But the fact is they've all come above 50%, well beyond that. Trump has a 60% approval rating on the coronavirus handling when it comes to Gallup. The only people who are still underwater, the media. Why? Because Trump can be a jerk. Sure, we already know that. We voted for him, or the country voted for him. But that does not mean you take a pandemic when people are trying to figure out how to feed their children, how to make rent, how to make sure their businesses don't shut or stay responsible for other parents being unable to feed their children. You do not turn that about. Was the president friendly to us today, or was he a little bit of a jerk?
All right. Speaking of elections, before we get back to all this coronavirus stuff, how does this go off, TIANA, in November? I mean, I'm already seeing talks of, well, it has to be all mail-in ballot, which is, of course, completely insane. The opportunities there to have it be the most corrupt election of all time, you'd think this was Rwanda. So we can't do that. They're telling people they can't gather. People are going to have to gather. I personally, even though I'm fine with President Trump being there for quite a while, am way not comfortable with any president or Congress postponing an election for any reason. I just think that gets into a really ugly precedent. How do we handle this?
So constitutionally speaking, if the election were postponed to the point where the Electoral College had not made a decision until January 3rd, I believe, it would just culminate in, I guess, a top cabinet member or a top senator being president. Like right now, I think it's Chuck Grassley, because if you couldn't vote for the president, then you also couldn't vote for the House of Representatives. And that means that Nancy Pelosi's term would culminate at the January 3rd mark, if I get that date correctly. With regard, so I'm from California. I know when Trump was spewing all these numbers about millions of illegal immigrants illicitly voting in 2016, that was not true. In 2020, it could absolutely be true. We know right now that ballots are being mailed to homes where in California, because of the school system, people fabricate their addresses quite frequently. So we're going to have this massive conundrum where elections, even for the presidency, are administered on a statewide level. So you're going to have Arizona doing it very differently from California, which will do it very differently from Wyoming, whatnot. But then also, it's just a very strange time with a non-incumbent challenger who's literally locked in the basement, right? For his safety, Joe Biden is 77 years old. It would not be safe for him to be remotely on the campaign trail. But it just means that there will not be any sort of Hillary-esque relitigation of this system, other than, did we adequately handle a pandemic? Did we make it so that way we could make sure that individual voters who were registered are able to cast their ballots? That's the only question that matters. It will not be about Russia. It will not be about foreign disinformation. It will be about, did we make this assured so that way there is no voter fraud on a domestic level?
Well, speaking of not safe, I'm not sure it's safe for Joe Biden to tie his own shoes at this point in time, but that is another story entirely. I have had this theory for a while now that the Trump administration, while I do not agree with how they've handled this shutting down the economy, I don't agree with the governors, the mayors, I think it's insane, but I think that he's being advised, and maybe he thinks himself, that we'll just be able to pass another multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, and that will be enough to soothe the economic pain of 40 to 50 million Americans out of work. I say not only is that completely insane, that actually has the possibility of sinking the US dollar. What I want to know is why a stupid Marine can see that, and why the President of the United States and all the Ivy League degrees around him cannot see that. This is madness.
So Trump, I mean, I know that we both respect the president immensely. He is also surrounded by moronic sycophants who just confirm his sort of baser instincts about the economy. So he right now sees, oh, we have 0% interest rates because people have no faith in the economy right now, no faith on our ability to return on investment. That's a great time to pass another infrastructure package, which is, I think that, Jesse, you and I agree that that's just the wrong tack. That is the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tack. Just to believe that if you don't need to pay back interest right now, that that's a good thing to do with $22 trillion in debt. And right now, our annual deficit might be $3 trillion. So the biggest issue is that he framing this as a stimulus was a fatal error. It's not a stimulus. It's a lifeline. It's a relief package because we have told small business owners and we've told individual workers and we've told people no savings. We are going to legally forbid you from going to your jobs and from having income. So if you have bills, too bad. We will try to get you cash in hand to pass this time. With most pandemics, there is a relatively U-shaped recovery, and that's great. If it goes on for 2 months, probably. If we're out of this, at least mostly or somewhat, by like the middle of summer, sure. If this goes on until August, there is no U-shaped recovery. Those restaurants, they won't be there anymore. Those stores, they won't be there anymore. And Trump just thinks he can buy his way out of it. And it's one of the things where if you come from real estate, it makes sense why he believes that. But that's just not the way the rest of the economy works. We have these razor-thin profit margins.
Well, I hope you don't spend your $1,200 all in one place. TIANA Lowe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jesse.
I have more. Hang on. CUOMO, CUOMO, CUOMO. You are going to be hearing that name a lot. And I know you've heard me talk about this already, but he did an interview with his brother, Chris Cuomo, on CNN, and listen to this.
Something. With all of this adulation that you're getting for doing your job, are you thinking about running for president? Tell the audience.
No.
No, you won't answer?
No, I answered. The answer is no.
No, you're not thinking about it?
Sometimes it's one word. I said no.
Have you thought about it?
No.
Are you open to thinking about it?
No.
Might you think about it at some point?
No.
How can you know what you might think about at some point right now?
Because I know what I might think about and what I won't think about. But you're a great interviewer, by the way.
It is fun to see two brothers going at each other like that. Okay, first of all, don't believe a single word of that, because every politician, as I've told you several times, every politician in the history of mankind who's going to run for president has denied that they're going to run for president right up to the point they actually run for president. I mean, there are too many to list. It's endless. Well, no, I'm not going to run. I haven't even thought about running. No, I'm not going to run the next day. I'm running for president. They all have to do this same game, and I find it to be absolutely hilarious. And I have a laundry list of ones that I've predicted before when they do this. In fact, the best indicator that they're going to run is when they deny that they're going to run. Remember, I think Beto O'Rourke was the last one. When I told everyone he was going to run for president, and he's out there, no, I wouldn't even consider it. I'm leaving public life. I just can't do it. And then they all have to go do that song and dance where they stand up and be like, look, I certainly didn't want this. It's for the people. The truth is, so many people have poured their love onto me that I just have no choice but to run for president at this point in time. Look, I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm saying this. To get to be governor of the state of New York, you have to be a politician's politician. That's the nicest way I can put that. You need some legacy. You need some favors. You have to have done some. You have to be owed some. New York's a complicated place. And if you want to be the governor of that state, you got to be a heavy hitter. And if you're a heavy hitter on that level where you've achieved the governorship of the state of New York, does that sound like the type of man to you where if a bunch of billionaires, and this is how it happens, people, a bunch of billionaires give them a call and they say, hey, we're sending a private jet. Come meet us down in Barbados for a day or two. And look, those phone calls happen, those meetings happen, and he flies on down there with the wife, or maybe without, who knows. Gets wined and dined for a little bit, and then they have a big meeting. Cigars, feet up, waves, and they say to him, look, you can be the Democrat nominee. And he says, well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I could be. They're like, no. You seem to misunderstand. We've already secured the delegates. If you decide that you're going to run, we're going to drop Biden, and we're going to make sure that you're the nominee. Do you think Andrew Cuomo chooses not to be the Democrat nominee for president of the United States of America? Of course he is. Of course he's going to. If that meeting happens, he's running for president. You heard it. I'm telling you right now. If that meeting happens, he's running for president. Also, as long as we're talking about governors and as long as we're talking about Cuomo, I want you to watch this really quick.
As governor of New York, I am asking healthcare professionals across the country, if you don't have a healthcare crisis in your community, please come help us in New York now.
One, that's the right call. Totally agree with that call, and I think it's what we should be doing as a nation because there are so many places out there. I mean, most of the country is not affected by this right now. New York's getting lambasted by it. Let's rally around them, send the troops. But two, setting that individual example aside, you notice how you've seen this from all kinds of mayors and governors across the country? You've even got that idiot in California, Newsom, praising Trump for this. Cuomo's praising Trump for that. Something you need to watch out for here. A lot of these governors, and I mean a lot of these governors, are rightfully worried about their bottom line, the bottom line of the budgets, those budgets where they ran for office promising a giveaway to you and a giveaway to you and a giveaway to you. A lot of these governors are about to use this crisis asking for a handout. Mark my words. You're about to see governor after governor after governor after governor ask and ask and ask and ask, and they're not all asking for the people. Hate to be a cynic. That's the way it is, though. All right, we're going to talk to Jim Hansen. Hang on. My friend joining me now from the Security Studies Group and former Green Beret, Barry Manilow. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Wow, Barry Manilow. I want to be Tom Jones, man. If I got to be old school, let me be Tom Jones.
No, his name is Jim Hansen. He needs no introduction on this show. Jim, first of all, where did you get that blazer?
The Outlet Mall, man. I can't remember which one it is. It's some expensive designer. It's like a $3,000 jacket that I got for $250. I know, it's got fake camouflage and everything.
Well, that should go well with, I've been wanting a bear coat, as you know, for some time, and I'm going to get my hands on one of those. But all that aside, before we get to all the other madness, I actually think that we as people on the right should be more worried about Cuomo running for president right now than we are. You and I went back and forth a little bit on this earlier today. What say you? I say he can walk into this convention tomorrow, get that nomination because Joe Biden, his mind is completely gone, and Bernie's an insane person, and with an economy that's about to be what ours is going to be, anything can happen. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think they're going to do it. It's just a question of who. Is it going to be Cuomo? Is Hillary going to swoop in on her broom and take it over? There's a lot of people who would love to do this. The game is wide open, and the question is, who do the billionaires tell them they got to back? But keep one thing in mind, and I think this is what I pointed out earlier, Cuomo's a jerk. I mean, Cuomo is the kind of New Yorker that everybody hates. New Yorkers hate him. People not from New York really hate him. So I think he would be a guy who would try to play the game in the same way Bloomberg did and take Trump on in Trump's game, which is mockeration and all that kind of stuff. The thing is, Trump's obviously enjoying it at some level, and Cuomo's not. Cuomo's an angry, one of those grumpy, just rude, belligerent New Yorkers. And I think that's where it would come off, because Trump is happy when he's on the campaign trail. Cuomo would be angry.
Yes, I totally agree. On top of the fact that he's a Cuomo, and we don't have to get into all this on the show, but there are, how do we put this, some skeletons in those closets that the Cuomo family, I believe, chose to not run for president before because of those skeletons. All that said, he is the governor of one of the most powerful states in the union. A lot of very rich people, you mentioned the billionaires, owe him some favors, and I'm sure vice versa. I could see him calling those in if he thinks he could walk into the nomination.
And it would be, I'm not saying it would not be a tough race. It would be a tough race, but I'll take him. There's people who scare me more because he's not an identity politics candidate. He's not someone who's going to rile up the Bernie bros and all of the crazed leftists who they're in danger of losing. Because first of all, they still haven't officially stuck the knife in Bernie, right? He's still technically a candidate, and he's the only one other than Biden with any actual delegates. So they have to kill him first. And when they kill him, all his crew, the Antifa resistance crowd, is going to go berserk. And Cuomo can't unify them. So they still got the potential for some riots and craziness and civil war on the Democrat side.
Where is that crazy crowd right now, Jim? I'll be honest, and everybody knows my thoughts on what we're doing during this whole thing, but I'm honestly seeing so many of that AOC crowd and her fans and the Bernie fans. They're kind of okay with everything going on. They're pretty big fans of government just stroking checks here and stroking checks there. And hey, I'll sit in my house naked eating Cheetos all day long. That's how they look at it. And I'm seeing an overlap here that I'm not comfortable with, man. When I'm agreeing with these crazies, something's wrong.
Oh, they're smoking a little ganj and sitting around talking about the revolution, man. That's what they're doing. And they are. You hit the nail on the head, though. They are loving the emergency powers. They are loving the government in charge. I will be the one who is telling you, no, you can't go to the park. No, you can't go walk in a government park. You can't do this. You can't do that because we're in charge. They want to use this like every crisis to consolidate power. So they're sitting back, they're going, yeah, man, this is cool. We'll tell them they can't do this. They can't drive. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. The thing is going to be hard is now we're going to have to rein everybody back in when this craziness is over. And they'll pop their heads back up when they stick the knives in Bernie. You just wait. They will squeal.
I'm worried about unrest. And I don't mean that there's going to be a civil war or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm worried about desperate people, Jim, and I'm really worried about it, man. I'm already seeing this desperation out there. You start taking away a man's ability to eat, to feed his family, to pay his rent, and now you have a pandemic going on, and it's a recipe for bad things happening. And anytime it's ever happened throughout history, bad things have happened. How do we get out ahead of something like that? Or is there a way? Or is it just protect yourself, arm up, and deal with it however you can?
I got 15,000 rounds of ammo and a whole closet full of guns, man.
I wasn't worried about you personally.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now, here's what President Trump did right. When he said we have to do 15 days of self-isolation, he said 15 days. People can stomach that. Then he said, we'll look at it again. And then he said, we won't let the cure be worse than the disease. He says, I know we need to reopen America. I know these things have to happen. Then you get idiots like KKK blackface Governor Northam, my governor, who put out a stay-at-home notice yesterday through June 10th. For God's sakes, that's ridiculous. That's telling every small business that relies on the public that I'm killing you. I'm a death panel for your functionality right now. It was idiotic. You could say, maybe we got to do 2 more weeks, and then we'll reevaluate. But you can't tell people I'm just going to shut you down. Like you said, they're going to become desperate, and they're not going to try and save their business. So he absolutely made things worse than he possibly could have. And we need more people to stand up and say, look, we're going to fix this as quick as we can. We'll do what we have to stop the pandemic version, but we can't kill the country in the process. You have to balance those two things.
Well, I don't see a balance, Jim. I'm sorry, I don't see it anywhere, and I don't see it at any level. I see only one side getting a voice in this whole thing. I see people like you saying we have to balance. I see people like me saying we have to balance. I do not see a government response that way. I see us lining up the economy and shooting it in the back of the head by a ditch, and then we're going to turn around at the end of this and be like, wow, maybe we went too far. When are we going to get some kind of moderation in this whole thing? I'm not even wanting extremes right now, which I am. I want some moderation. We have none.
Well, here's one thing Trump said that I think could work on this. He's looking at it from a hotspot perspective. He's looking at it and saying, where is this really, really bad? New York City, Seattle, Chicago, the big cities, the places where people were already stacked on top of each other, you know, like a bunch of hamsters in a cell. But then you look at the rest of the country where you can actually go ahead, put some common sense sanitation and epidemiological, protocols in play and say, we can come out now. We can do some testing, we can do some other things, and we can open parts of the country where it's not as bad. That'll give people hope. I mean, you got to start with hope. We may not be able to open up the whole country all at once, but if you take the worst places and isolate them more and take the least affected places and say, we got to let these people out, at least that's a start. But I agree with you. It's got to start or people are going to get desperate.
What a concept. Treat rural Oklahoma a little different than we treat New York City. That is, wow, I can't believe someone thought of that. Thank you, Jim. Please keep doing what you're doing. We need your voice out there, man. Appreciate you.
Same to you.
We have some good news. Hang on. Have you ever heard of Admiral Yamamoto? A little bit out of left field, I know, but he was the guy in charge of, well, pretty much Japan's whole military effort, definitely in charge of Japan's naval fleet during World War II. And do you know what he had to say about the United States? He said, anybody who's seen the auto factories of Detroit and the oil fields of Texas knows that you cannot win a naval war with the United States of America. Of course, he turned out to be right. Our production, our economic system, of course, the one we're currently killing, but our economic system won that war. You simply cannot survive if you're fighting against a country that can constantly just churn out bullets and planes and tanks and ships until you're broke. Yours get broken, and they just keep churning out new ones. I love those stories. Our country's history is filled with those stories of not the government, of private industries, major private industries rallying to provide exactly what we need in times of emergency. Yes, during wars, and yes, during times like this. The Ford Motor Company, guess what they're doing? Quote, starting in April, we're producing a ventilator with GE leveraging the design of CORP's FDA-cleared ventilator. It's designed to operate on air pressure without electricity, making it a versatile solution to help those fighting COVID-19. Built Ford proud. And guess what? That's the same thing the auto manufacturers did the last time we needed them. The economic engine of this country saves lives. In fact, the economic engine of this country has saved the world twice over. And they're doing it again. We talked about MyPillow. We're talking about Ford. They're not alone. The private industries in this country are stepping up, and I, for one, love it. Good for them. Good for Ford. All right. We'll do it again tomorrow. See you.